listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today is Thursday, February 1st, year of our Lord 2018.
Already February.
Awesome. 2018. And you're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. So, hi guys.
Hi.
How was traffic?
Not bad, actually, for me.
Dude, I literally made it here in like...
It was fine.
7 minutes.
Yeah, it was no big deal.
I got the text from Dave. I finished up something I had to finish up and then hopped in the car, and he and I pulled in at the same time. He made a great time.
Yeah, no, after this week, even bad traffic would seem awesome.
Yeah, they've been beating you up, huh?
Dude, I've been working mad hours this week.
You know, it's a good thing we didn't go to that reception after the memorial service.
Yeah.
Everybody's sick.
I don't know if it's from that or if they were all on the other side of the... If you remember that kid, whoever's kid that was, they should have kept them home, hacking their guts out the whole time.
I don't know who it was.
Ugh. I'm like, keep that kid at home. What are you doing? Of course everybody's sick. That's what happens when you go out in public and you're sick. Everybody gets sick. So, yeah, I just kept hearing that kid coughing his lungs out the whole time.
I thought it was maybe the salmon moose.
Like, just leave the kid at home. Man. So, luckily, so far, I'm good. You're good.
I'm good. You're good.
Domus in the house.
Hi, Tony.
Tony D.
Is this mic on?
It is now.
No, it's not on.
No, it's not.
Turn me on.
Any updates on fasting from anybody?
No, my diet's still solid, so I'm good there. I've actually lost a little bit of weight, too.
How do you feel?
Fine. I feel good, dude, yeah.
You feel better? Or
way
just
better.
Back to normal?
No, way better.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel a lot better.
I did a 24 yesterday.
Did you?
How you feel?
Like $1 million.
Like
$1 million
bucks? I feel like $100.
I feel like $100.
I feel like $1.250.
Yeah, no, I feel fine. Other than
I had a conversation with Rob yesterday, and they're just too few and far between. Because every time I get a chance to have a meaningful conversation with him, it always gives me a new perspective on.
Ends
things.
up being meaningful.
Yeah,
Imagine
very
that.
meaningful. Yeah. Unlike most of the conversations I have with people, but I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to do my fast.
You ought to, dude. I've been bugging you.
I'm doing my fast. Hey, I got to research a few things, and
It's nothing to research, dude.
And I must procrastinate just a little bit.
It's 2 days.
Okay,
you're good.
I'm going to do my fast because I am positive. I'm gonna keep notes, but I am positive that the way everything's going down, God, that what God is telling me is that I need to see something.
Yeah.
Look, dude, I've done this, I've done that. I gave you this, I gave you that. I need to see a little more commitment out of you, dude.
Yeah.
I think that's what God's telling me. So,
well, that's actually what it's about. So I'm telling you, you'll be so glad you did it. Even if it doesn't make like this tremendous impact, it will.
I have a feeling it will.
It'll just be. It won't do nothing. Let's
and
put
you
it that
still
way.
hate smoking?
I actually have. I backslid a little bit. That's okay. I'm a scientist. Okay, so I had to test the effects
to see if you still vomit.
And let me tell you what, the effects aren't permanent.
Okay,
but I know why.
You were digging it.
But I know why. It's because God has to leave a measure of faith. This is why he doesn't like grow back amputated limbs on TV, and he doesn't perform miracles like that anymore. Because you got to leave a measure of faith. So the effects weren't permanent, but I still don't like it. And I haven't bought any. I'm not smoking. And my diet's still solid. I messed up my back, though. I slept on the floor for 4 days. But it fixed it.
Your back?
Do that, dude. Yeah, if you ever like pull something in your back, sleep on the bare, hard floor, and it fixes it right up.
The other interesting thing that I just seen a lot of is grounding.
Yeah?
You guys...
Like with your kids?
No. With
electrically?
With your feet. With your feet.
Oh, okay.
What?
No shoes and socks.
Okay.
Something to do with grounding yourself to the earth and energy and all those kinds of stuff.
Sounds a little new age for me.
It does. It does. I'm kind of looking into it.
I'm not into that. So
I think you have to be wearing a white robe, right?
No, actually, they talked a lot about like the American Indian.
Yeah, I'm out.
And that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
that's kind of semi-pagan.
It's actually pagan.
Actually,
yeah.
But like scientifically, it could make sense.
Maybe.
You know.
They think evolution makes sense.
Oh, I got railed on that one the other day.
How can you get railed on evolution?
Oh, you know,
it's ridiculous.
Because you're one of those Christian.
I'm telling you though, that advice I gave you, take that to heart, dude. Trust me on that.
Yeah. I'm gonna
trust me on that because you're getting an unbalanced amount of demonic attacks.
Yeah,
and it's time to insulate yourself a little bit from those because
I actually enjoyed it, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
it was one of those things to me that we're talking about with that Facebook post.
Oh, dude, his page is ridiculous.
I don't know how that went viral
over
like
an
that.
hour because people shared it.
People shared it,
and it was their friends that were. It had like 40 shares when I looked at it.
It's crazy. It would last I looked at it, and this was that day. It was like up to something like 80 comments or something.
Which video?
It was like 700.
Which video?
Now,
oh yeah, 700.
Oh my lord!
When I looked at it, all the noise had passed. By the time I got to
Which
it,
video are we talking about?
He shared that Google Home video, with
but he wrote a commentary on it. He
Yeah.
did write a commentary on it, which I think is what sparked some of it.
Yeah.
But he did that Google Jesus video. And,
Why don't we tell our listeners where they can go to see this?
Just search it, Google Home Jesus, and you'll find it all over the place.
Yeah.
A bunch of people put videos up about it, not just that one lady.
Yeah. There were more
It's
videos.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
Just remember, as soon as Google fixes that, which they will, it's now going to look like we're up Google's butt.
Oh, yeah,
I wouldn't make such a big permanent deal out of this, just so you guys know. But that's
No,
just
but
me.
the reaction that he got, I will
Right.
make a permanent deal out of it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it proves a point.
Yeah,
And
the article didn't mean much.
It doesn't. It's nothing.
But like you said, for a social experiment, it
Yep.
was perfect because, and it wasn't like anything outlandish.
No.
What was said was basically like, hey, this is what's going on with Google, and we've kind of checked this out a little bit, and it seems to make sense that it has to make sense because it's a purposeful thing because they can change that in their programming.
They did, yeah.
And they did. And Steven Crowder brought it out. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah. No,
Steven
I heard
Crowder
about
brought
that.
it out
Yep.
where he said Jesus is a fictional character.
Yep.
Who said that?
Google.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Steven Crowder.
No.
Wow.
Steven Crowder was on it. He brought it out.
Okay.
And then, so now they were talking about it, and then you guys were talking about it on the show the other day when you were playing it, right? And then so I see the article when I get home on Facebook, and I said, yeah, this is kind of a real thing. It's purposeful because it's not by accident,
Right.
because it changes, right? And I basically said to use your words, Dave, of there's a war going on between two kingdoms,
Right.
and that was basically it.
That's it.
And then it was just the attacks about how
Dude, some of the stuff people say it's really funny because the irony of it is someone will aim the comment at you how you are a crazy whack job,
right,
irrational beliefs, blah blah blah, and actually their attack on you is what's irrational.
right.
It's
Right.
the irony is these
The
people
anger,
don't even
the anger
Wow.
on there, unbelievable.
It's crazy. It's really
But
really crazy.
it did take almost 200 replies before someone called Christ a fictional character.
But somebody actually did.
Oh yeah,
Okay, on his thread.
and in a absolutely condescending, blowhard way.
Well, what's really interesting about that is we are approaching the great apostasy because we are in the end days, and this is going to happen widespread, and it's going to end up coming out of the church too. And you're seeing it. That's the groundwork for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's mainstream now,
Yeah,
and it will eventually evolve to the point where heresy will be the name of that'll be actually the popular thing.
Mm-hmm.
And goes to show you, man, you drop a JC bomb and people will freak out. It's crazy.
yeah, it is.
That's what's crazy to me.
Unbelievable.
If you
The
were to come out,
reaction.
and this is just presumptuous on my part, but if you were to come out and lay out a whole big thing of how you found peace in Buddhism
Mm-hmm.
and Buddha this, and you are now this, you would have nothing but loving
Love, yeah.
Praise, yeah.
praise,
Convert to
positive comments, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's a peaceful. That's so great that you finally see that. You would get nothing but positive love out of that, when clearly it's completely pagan. But whatever, it's. I was just kind of appalled
Yeah.
That's some of the stuff people
Maybe
were
you
saying.
should convert to Islam on your page.
You can't do that because that's apostasy. He'd be in big trouble if he does that.
As a social experiment?
Well, maybe as a social experiment, it's okay.
What if his fingers are crossed behind his back
Yeah,
when
if
he
he
types
if,
it?
it's maybe okay for that reason to prove that your point. But I think even then would be because it's a peaceful religion and love to all the whatever.
Yeah.
I think we got the message out of that. I got the message I need.
Oh man,
you did.
dude, I was going through there going, and each one I was like, eyes kept getting bigger. I'm like, these people are adults.
I
like,
commented
wow,
to at least 4, and they didn't take my bait and engage me, probably because it had been too long.
Just the hate, man.
Yeah,
I
for
was
literally nothing.
I was.
I
happy
literally
that I didn't
shed a
respond to
tear
it.
for you. Me and Dave were talking about getting like a dog, send a dog to your house for you to pet.
Some
I was
Play-Doh coloring
I
books.
laughed the whole time. I was like, "Hey, this is great! I can't believe."
Well,
this.
that's good that you can come out of
Yeah.
it. Most people can't deal with that.
Yeah,
They can't deal with that. But yeah, good for you, man. You ended up being the most hated person I know on Facebook for a while.
Yeah,
it was just strange, and like you said, if you talk about somebody else, the message is totally different. So there's something going on there, and the thing is, like, do you really care what those people say because they're idiots?
Well, you at this point know enough to expect it.
Yeah.
He's already warning us that this is going to happen, so be ready. So yeah, when you got to experience demon gangs firsthand,
Yeah.
they come at you 8 at a time, bro, and they keep coming. Interesting,
Yeah. I don't know why I'm smiling.
because it's, you know what it is. It's affirming. It proves that you're correct.
Yeah.
Believe me, you would much rather be in this battle and be aware that you're in it than to be unaware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
Amen.
understand the catastrophe we're talking about? A personal catastrophe if this catches you by surprise.
Yeah. And I reposted that after, and basically said this kind of justifies what I'm thinking.
Right.
And basically telling people, hey, just because of this, maybe you should just crack the book. You know what I mean?
Check it out.
Check it out for yourself. Don't
Yeah.
listen to anyone else, which is what you guys have been saying for how long.
Check it out.
Check out things for yourself. You don't believe anybody 100%. So, yeah, I could be whatever, but look in the book and see for yourself what you see out of it. So,
and that almost seems to infuriate people more.
Yeah.
Don't you find that when you tell them don't trust me, open the book and read for yourself, that you seem to get even more vitriol in the reaction
because there's no
than when you're like, no, listen to me, I know.
Because you're not arguing at that point. You're
Well,
just
and
you're
you're not
just
changing- and they're not changing your mind. Their point is they're trying to bully you into silence.
Well, when you respond to hate with love, you're always going to get more hate back. So, that actually telling someone, hey, why don't you look in the book for yourself? They don't realize it, but that actually is a statement that comes out of love for that person, even if you don't know them. Mm-hmm. Because if you didn't care and you were kind of, spiteful, you'd be like, please don't open it because I want you to burn.
I don't want to hang with you.
You know what I'm saying? But you don't. You're telling them, hey, man, you should check into this. They want argument. They want confrontation. They want to get nastier and nastier so that they can say, see, look, the Christian is just as nasty as everybody else, right?
Which we can be.
Well, we're not perfect. No one's
Yeah,
perfect,
absolutely.
but we at least see the fault in our ways.
All right, so today it is February 1st,
It is.
2018. This is a genpopmedia.com production. You can always visit our website. If
Check
you wanna
out
hear
the website.
Old podcasts, yeah.
It's awesome.
There's a lot of stuff going on there that I'm not even aware of yet.
There's things going on I'm not aware of.
Before we get going, I just want to make sure that the powers in heaven understand where we're throwing praise to, and that goes to God, Jesus, the angel, everyone that keeps this system operating. Your work is not unnoticed. And we've got a shout-out, a special one tonight, which I'd like to give. It is to a dear friend who was on the show last year, Trina Maria. You guys familiar? She was I Am the Face of Truth. Remember we had those guys on?
Right, yeah.
So they've got a couple things going on which are neat, and I wanted to direct some people that way. it looks like they're trying to galvanize the truth movement. I'm going to point you guys to two places to check out. One is called onevoicenow.org. Check that out, and you can always go see IamTheFaceOfTruth.org if you want to get involved in getting the truth to the masses, which they do not have. So Trina, Claudio Marty, our friends over at I Am the Face of Truth, this was your shout out. And we will have you guys on again soon, probably in the spring. We've got a few things coming up here which we're not ready to announce, but March and April are going to be very special months around here. We'll just leave you with that now. So the only other thing that was on my list to just check off was to I promised I'd do an update and a comment on the fasting results. So I finished my fast about a week ago, and for the next 5-6 days, I don't think I've ever felt physically and mentally better. Or it's been so long I don't remember. It's been since I was a kid. Unbounding energy, just with the feeling like you can conquer the world kind of energy. And I'm going to do a lot of experimentation with this, with trial and error here. But this is definitely going to become a lifestyle for me. And this particular week, smoking wasn't at the top of my list. What I think I'm going to be doing is devoting one fasting session to one situation I'm taking up with God. Smoking is going to be one of those situations, but I've got other situations to deal with that are higher ranking. But the benefits are off the chart. I went back to eating my regular old junk foodie diet. And yesterday was the first day I didn't feel, I could start to feel a little tapering off. And it's funny, but I went midnight snack in one of those nights, and I could so feel it, and I still haven't shaked it.
How many days did you fast?
It came out to about just under 3 days. It was like 64 hours or something like that. And I felt like I came up 12 hours short in my mind. I feel like I didn't reach my minimum threshold. But there were benefits off the charts. And in terms of spiritual and having some kind of discernment, communication with God, things of a spiritual nature, just like they said it would, things that are confusing to you or that you're undecided about, they just come to you. You just see exactly how they're supposed to fit together to put your plan together. So I absolutely vouch for it.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's biblical too. I mean, that's where I got it from, right? It was from the same place Tony did.
Even if I had to endure a fast, which is only hard for the first 24 to 36 hours, really, maybe 48. But if I had to endure that once a month to get 1 week like I just had, even if it's just 1 week, and the rest of the 2 weeks are just like, the old body, beaten down, energy drain, always looking for, I would still make this a part of my regular. It's worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely worth it. I mean, it's a humbling experience, which is the point, because, God always tells us to make ourselves humble, and you don't want to, excuse me, pray for God to make you humble, because He'll humiliate you. I think you need to, humble yourself, and fasting is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think He heard my prayer, and He went ahead and humbled me to the...
Yeah, you don't want to ever... I would suggest against praying for God to humble you. You need to find a way to do that on your own.
Better to do it on your own than to leave it to Him.
He will humiliate you for sure.
Jesus Christ has never been wrong on a prediction. He said 2,000 years ago that His followers, His sheep, will fast.
Yeah.
I have no idea how this works, but all things being equal, I'm guessing you'd rather do that on your terms than on His terms. But if all of His people will fast, it means it's going to happen at some point. it can either be something that you're directing, or you may be being flayed around in the ocean as it goes with someone else directing it.
Yeah, he said when you fast, and then gives some outlines, but he doesn't say if you fast.
All right,
So you went 64.
Roughly, yeah. And I don't know, like the breakdown started. I already knew I was going to have something that night after the show. I was going to have just a few, soup thingies. And
Soup thingies?
Yeah.
spoonfuls. Sorry. And which was fine. And then 3 hours later, that turned into, I'm looking at the clock going, it's almost, and I ended up pigging out that night.
That's what
Still
happened to me too.
felt.
I was hungry.
I
man.
mean, I've never felt better. I've literally, or I should say, it's been so long, I forgot that feeling. It's that feeling you have when you're young, you're ambitious, you have not been beaten down by life yet.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to conquer the world kind of feeling. It was great.
I think one of the things when you talk about when you're doing fast, I think you have to keep it up because you have a lot of toxic stuff in your cells.
Lots.
Yeah.
In your
I
fat
don't
cells.
even
Well,
and that kind of
depending on
things,
your
right?
age, right?
Yeah.
I've been building up stuff for a long
Yeah,
time.
you're
So
I don't think you're going to clear it all out in one fasting session, unless you do a really long fasting
yeah,
session.
like a month.
But if this is what happened after almost 3 days, and knowing that I was in that zone already where I could have continued fasting, like I'm almost looking at this down the road going, every hour I can make it, it's just another hour where I'm burning defective
Yeah.
cells and replacing them with brand new, fully functional ones. And I'm telling you, it made a difference all over my body. It just...
Yeah. I'm still actually, of course I did, I altered my diet quite a bit. I'm not eating, I haven't been out to lunch, like to a restaurant. I haven't eaten in a restaurant since I went on that fast. So every day at lunch I eat a salad, but it's not just salad. I got, there's stuff in there, almonds, cheese, cucumbers, whatever, tomatoes, and some tuna fish and a couple boiled eggs, man, every day.
Yeah, at
And
the end of the
that's-
day, if you put a salad in front of me, I'll eat it, and I'll be fine. If you don't put a salad in front of me, I'll probably eat a pizza instead.
That's,
And
cheeseburger or something like this,
I went the pizza cheeseburger route almost on purpose to see, how long does this good effect last? And I'm already feeling it tapering off. But I think if I would have kept my diet pretty clean, Daniel-esque, just vegetables and fruits and water, which I frankly wouldn't do because eating food is one of the joys of life, and I like doing it with a glass of wine and making an event out of it. But if I were completely focused on this and nothing else, I think if I had stuck to a constrictive diet, I think I'd still be feeling like I was a week ago.
Oh, you yeah.
But I've
Makes a big difference.
literally put all those poisons back in my body, and I'm just kind of measuring right now anecdotally how my body deals with it.
Yeah. I mean, I cut out the pop altogether. I mean, I had maybe one, glass of pop since, mostly water. I drink coffee, but only black coffee. And, milk, but I drink milk anyway because I like it. But other than that, man, it makes a huge difference.
Okay. Any other comments on fasting then?
No, just, I think we covered it.
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. We covered it pretty completely.
All right. So today we're going to continue a conversation we started last week where we're basically assembling a profile of Jesus Christ. Who he was, what motivated him, the impact he's had on the world. We spent last week's show talking about the fact that he's probably the most famous figure that's ever existed. All of history, really, he's the dividing line of history, even the way we label our calendars, BC, before Christ, AD, which is Anno Domini, which translates essentially into in the year of our Lord. Now, Dave, you pointed out that they're starting to come out with CE, which I believe stands for current era.
Yeah, current era.
Is that it? Current
Something
era?
like that?
Yeah.
Again, the removal of God's name or anything divine out of our reach it's really an all-encompassing effort. There was so you know I'm watching films constantly for a number of reasons besides entertainment, and one of them is that there are certain types of films that they're speaking to the audience on many levels, many more than just the theater viewing audience might understand. This is one of the ways that evil operates, whether it's mandated by the powers of heaven or not. They do seem to announce what it is they're going to do years ahead of time. Or they're just incredibly, unbelievably lucky when they write a book about the biggest ship sinking, and then the ship sinks 15 years later. They talk about buildings falling, which has never happened, and they happen to fall 15 years later. So there's something to that. And so there's a number of scenes out of movies like James Bond's Spectre and The Matrix where there's hidden messages all over the place, but you have to stop the film and study the scene. One of the types of scenes I've always wanted to start recording, just to show how endemic this is. How you guys ever saw the show How I Met Your Mother?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
TV show.
Something I noticed while watching that show is every time the characters were doing something in which a human being would naturally be talking to God, like, please help me in life, direct me. They never would use God. They always would substitute one particular word for it. Any clues on how... Am I mean anything to anyone?
Not a clue.
So what I was hearing on this particular show, and I'm bringing this up because I heard this again last night, and that's when I decided I'm going to go find and capture these and put them together so you can see them. But whenever the characters on How I Met Your Mother, they needed luck or they needed what we would call divine intervention, some help from God, they would always pray to the universe. May the universe bring me happiness. May the universe... Whereas you could almost just replace that with God. So and I saw this on a few shows, and then there's plenty of other things to do. And truly, just for entertainment purposes, last night I started rewatching Arrested Development, which I'd seen like a decade ago. Have you guys ever seen that?
I think so, yeah.
Just
Bateman's awesome.
Effing hilarious. And something I did not pick up on 10 years ago when I saw it for the first time is one of the characters, his brother-in-law. Same thing. Every time he's, in a sense, praying, he's praying, and he uses the exact word, to the universe. And you start to look around, and that's really, they don't even say on mainstream media, like the major shows that are on people's minds that have the audience share. Even that, they don't even say, God, please help me. Now they're saying, universe, please help me. And you don't feel it because it's almost immeasurable. But that, pounds into you over years and years and years, and it helps. It's just one little cog in a major operation to get you to believe that we are here as a result of a random accident of the universe, which is now that I've actually looked into it, is the silliest thing I've ever... And to wake up from that brainwashing and be able to look back is a little... Sometimes it's scary and shocking what they can get someone to believe.
Yeah,
Literally.
That's actually coming back. It's like a... excuse me, I'm losing my voice for some reason. It's kind of like a new age thing where it falls in line with meditation and yoga and finding your higher power.
There was racist. CBS has done a SWAT reboot. Everybody remembers SWAT from the 70s, Floyd Bridges, and conversely, I was watching. It's pretty good. It's got the Shamar Morgan, who used to be in Criminal Minds. The best thing about Criminal Minds after Mandy Patinkin left. And on the show, this guy is interrogating this girl, and he can't get anywhere. No matter what tactic they're using, they can't get this girl to talk. And one of the other officers is like, "Let me take a shot at her." And he somehow noticed by her purse or something she had, he took a shot that she was religious. And he basically came at her from a religious standpoint and was basically like, well, how do you reconcile that with God? You need to, basically shaming her into telling the truth, because that's what God would want her to do. It was the first time, maybe ever, in a movie or TV I've seen a positive use of God. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, where's this going to change? And then 2 weeks later, I'm watching it. Same character helps somebody out of a bad situation and says, "Hey, no matter what happens, we're going to get through this. My family and I are praying for you."
Yeah.
This isn't CBS. This is a CBS
Yeah,
show.
there are
there are still Christians. I mean, there are Christians in Hollywood. There are Christians in government. In fact, I even think,
But I'm saying this made it on network television.
Yeah.
It shocked me.
well, he's too crafty to just drop it. It is, let's just be honest, across all media compared to, say, where we were in 1950, the references to God or the way that he is portrayed is changing rapidly, and it's nothing favorable to God. It's typically in a
Yeah.
might not everything
no,
might not be in
absolutely.
that direction. It's like a stock graph. It's heading down. There's still some highs and lows, and Christianity, there are still Christians on this world, and they're not helpless, and this is the more powerful kingdom, and it's going to have its goals met. That's what I had to say about that.
Okay.
So we'd come to the conclusion that no matter who you ask, whether it's Christian, atheist, Jew, communist, etc., that pretty much the universal answer, I have yet to hear one that's plausible, is that Jesus Christ is the most influential and famous person that's existed. Now, there's something spiritual about that, because there are a lot of famous... if all he was a spiritual teacher, his argument is, if you think that's what he was, you have no idea who he is. He's not one of the good guys. The option that Jesus was a great person does not exist. You guys understand what I mean by this?
Yeah, because if he was the same as, say, if he was just a prophet, like you said, just a teacher, but everybody is familiar with that name, then wouldn't they also be familiar with the name of all the prophets? I mean, most people can't name off a list of the prophets for you, unless, of course, they're studied Christians or Jews. But almost everybody has heard of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, look, all of the Old Testament prophets who were separated by thousands of years, this is just the Old Testament, different continents, even writing in different languages, they all had this one common message before they could compare notes, and that is that the Son of God would be coming. Okay? Jesus Christ shows up. He is the only person that I'm aware of that has any kind of reputation that is claimed to be the Son of God. He performed miracles. So when I say the option of saying that he's a great man does not exist, it is because he's saying he's the creator of the universe. He was there when it was made. He says, I am above all things. Now, he did great things. We know that. And he performed miracles. He had a following. I mean, he was famous even in his day during his 3.5-year ministry. But if your take on him is he's one of the great ones, you've completely missed the point, because it's not possible, because a man cannot be great if he's lying about being the Son of God. He's either the Son of God or he isn't. So you can almost make this decision square. And at the top, you've got Son of God or not Son of God. And we also know that that means that he's either telling the truth or he's lying. So if he's not the Son of God, or if he's lying, he's not a great man. If he is the Son of God, you can't say he's a great man because it's not enough.
Right.
I would argue that you don't truly know him, and you'll need to know him and have a relationship with him. But if you think that he's equal with, other great spiritual leaders like Gandhi, Buddha, everyone's spiritual leader, freedom fighter, hero is also someone else's enemy or a terrorist in a sense. So whether I'm talking about Che Guevara, MLK, JFK, even going back through history, even famously to Alexander, Napoleon, Mandela, Spartacus, Joan of Arc, Buddha, Confucius, Lenin, Voltaire, Einstein, Newton, and even up to Bill Gates. These are all great men. But do any of those names I just threw out have people willingly die for them still? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think people are dying for Gandhi today.
Probably not.
I don't think people are dying for Buddha still. So there is something special about him, and no matter how you look at it, the ability to say he was a great man is not on the table.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because it's a really piercing point, because there's this conundrum about people who recognize Jesus as a prophet but not as the Son of God. That's an interesting take, because if he's just a prophet, right? Not undermining prophets by any means. But if you're going to recognize him as a prophet, but you're going to, in the same breath, say that he's not the Son of God, then you've just called him a liar, and he's not a prophet.
Right. And
so where do they? This is a very interesting problem for, especially coming out of the Jewish faith and even Islam as well.
Even for any Muslim, which they have the same first 5 books of the Bible that Hebrews do, that Christians do. And if I've seen, there was a time, for instance, I was radical about defending evolution with some people years ago. Had never read the Bible. There are people today that are radical about Islam. But
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if they do exactly what we've all done one way or another, which is to actually study those 5 books for real, not what a television show tells you, not what your local pastor tells you or your local imam, to see it with your own eyes and read it for yourself and understand it like that. Many of them, in fact, this is what converts many Muslims to Christianity, is they realize, holy cow, the whole book, the whole Old Testament was written about Jesus.
Yeah.
It was written about this person that would come. And they've got somewhere around 50 to 200 descriptions of exactly when this guy will be born, where he'll be born, where he'll live, what he's going to look like, how he's going to die, what's going to happen after his death. I mean, everything was moving along swimmingly. And he arrives. And like the same prophets predicted, the elders of the very chosen people that he operated through, the Hebrews, were going to reject him, which they did. He predicted, that was predicted by all the prophets ahead of time. And then also, along with that prediction, was the prediction that he'd rise from the dead. Now, he didn't have a lot of disciples the night before he was crucified. In fact, all his disciples scattered on him. Yet, something happened between his crucifixion and today that somehow his message went, which was only carried in the hands of these 12 scared guys that went off running. Peter denied him 3 times.
God, even his own brothers didn't believe it until he rose from the dead.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
something happened in history that launched this campaign, which exists to this day, and I can think of no other human being that this applies to, good or bad. You know, there have been people that have claimed to be God. They've wanted worship, from Nero to Caligula to Genghis Khan, Hitler recently. But none of their campaigns endured beyond their life. Can anyone name one that has?
Not to this level, no. No. I mean, you have kind of like you mentioned Hitler, so someone might say, well, you still have the neo-Nazis, whatever. But that's such a low-rent kind of, it doesn't really matter. You know, does he have kind of a following? Yeah, sort of, kind of, but it's not even the same thing. It's not comparable.
Here's another clue that you are talking about the actual Son of God, because this is spiritual. Because the person that's claiming to have this identity has told us that the enemy of humanity, Satan, will be in charge of earth, he is the king of earth currently. Now, when Jesus comes, he's going to be essentially taking the deed of earth back. But the same person said, you got to think about this. Jesus Christ himself said that if you're going to follow me in this world, now this is a very odd prediction for a peaceful man, a man that used miracles to heal and to make people better. It's very odd that he would have predicted that the people that will be behind him, his sheep, his followers, the people that will be getting his message out, they will be hated by the world. A world that is controlled by, and I'm not saying Jesus is enemy. If you think Satan is Jesus' enemy, you've gotten it wrong. There is a hierarchy here, and Satan is below Jesus. Satan is humanity's enemy. Jesus has already conquered him, which gives us a way out of Satan's trap. But at the end of the day, he is the most polarizing name in history. And I can bring up anybody, good or bad. I mean, much more, I can bring up names like Hitler and Ted Bundy. I can bring those names up at a party. No big deal.
Right.
But you bring up Jesus Christ, and everyone's got to chime in. The people that love him are going to swear he's real. And the people that don't believe him, they're not going to slough it off like you are talking about you believe in the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus. For some reason, the ball game is completely changed when the name being discussed is Jesus Christ. And there is no other name that does that.
No.
And what's funny, because I used to get in arguments with Betsy about this, because she would say, well, God is love. He's here to unite. And I'm like, well, God is love. Yes, that is, But he actually said the exact opposite. And this was a surprise even to me at first, because, again, I had to read it for myself. But he actually said, I came to divide. Like, I came to divide families.
The second time.
Well, his first visit, he had said somewhere in one of the 4 Gospels, is that he's not here to unite. He's here to divide people, to get off the fence.
Well,
you're either for me or you are. If you're not for me, you're against me. No decision is a decision against him, because we've already talked about he is not going to yank you against your will into his place. I was on Tony Schwartz's show a few nights ago,
yeah.
Freedom Works. Hi, Tony. Tony and Teresa, great, by the way. And they totally understand all of this, all of it. And I was just like, God's, if we look at it from the CEO example, if God's running a business, if he's running an organization up there, and if you've ever run an organization, would you just grab someone that's walking down the street and just yank them and sit them down at your desk or at a cubicle and say, you're going to work here now? I mean, even if you have the best company in the United States, is that going to work? No, because you'll have people that are not, they're there against their will. So unless you want to go there, you're not. You've got to want to go, and there's some very basic things. But at the end of the day, Jesus Christ, I mean, you can talk about Ted Bundy, Bin Laden, Trump, Oswald, Queen Victoria, Santa the Pope, Benedict Arnold. Some of these people I mentioned, they're murdering millions of people.
Right. Yeah.
I can make a joke, Dave, that you love Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Everyone laughs. But if I make a joke that you love Jesus Christ in front of, a party of strangers, something just happened in that room.
Yeah, you'll get scoffers come out. Because, this is all spiritual in nature. By the way. If you get a negative, why it's so polarizing is because that Satan doesn't care what you believe in as long as it's not Jesus. So you can believe in whatever you want as far as Satan's concerned. As soon as you believe in Jesus, now you're out of his reach to some extent, right? I mean, for the most part, he can't get at you. You are. That's why we say you are saved.
So he can still get at you, and there's a lot of ways, but
it's not. We don't want to get into debate about eternal security and all that, but you kind of get my point. Is for a non-believer is wide open territory for Satan. In fact, it's the only thing that's allowed in at that point. A believer, however, does have some protection against this. Now, how you will be subject to demonic attacks, which is what would happen if you say you love Jesus at a party and someone gets angry with you because of what you said. That is clearly demonic in nature. It's Satan's minions attacking you for your belief because he's the only thing that has power over Satan is Jesus.
You guys know what happened with me and my former friends in my hometown. Which I absolutely believe was the result of, there was a spiritual element to this.
Sure.
Because this reaction was nowhere nearly commensurate with anything that I've done to anybody. Like, I'm feeling hate from people that this is unnatural from my perspective. And one thing that made me feel better, and I was about to look up this video. You guys know who Dave Wilkerson is?
Sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar.
He is the man that started the church in Times Square, and I think it's called Times Square something or other. There was a movie, The Cross and the Switchblade, that he was behind. Evangelical minister, prophet. And what's interesting is, if you look up Dave Wilkerson, 1973 prophecy, he made begrudgingly, because he's like, I don't like to preach like this, but God basically said, I have to say this to you. And he said a bunch of things that were frankly pretty disturbing if you're a Christian in 1973. Now, what's just fascinating about this, now maybe this wasn't so hard to see back then, but remember, it's 1973. We've got 3 channels on our television, basically. We're using rabbit ears to get connection. And he says that in the near future, which I would consider now, that the number of channels available is going to go off the charts, and that he goes, and this is him talking in 1973, saying, and believe it or not, you are going to be able to find R-rated movies and X-rated movies all over that television set in the future. Which, that was a big prediction in 1973, which absolutely came true. And there was another prediction he made, which it made me feel one heck of a lot better. And I think it's at the 34-minute mark of his video, where he literally says that there will be a wave of gossip that will kick up. And he said, for anyone that is promoting the teachings of Jesus Christ, there's going to be a wave of gossip that is going to rise up in churches. It is going to rise up in your hometowns. God put this vision in my head to share with you guys. The most vile and hateful things will be done and said against you, even by your own friends in your own circles, which I thought was unbelievable, because 25, 35 years later, like, I'm actually literally observing it Like, in my mind, that is from my personal experience, it's a fulfilled prophecy. Dave Wilkerson, he's definitely someone that I would look at. I was going to see if I had this queued up, but it's probably, I might do it during the break. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
His prophecy?
Everything we've talked to up to now.
Well, I think you're spot on. I think anyone who would try to argue that not only is Jesus the most famous person that ever lived, but also the most polarizing name, would have a pretty hard time arguing that.
One of the things that was killing me is when people call him. I understand the argument he's not the Son of God. I happen to know he is the Son of God, but I could see how someone may not be willing to concede that.
Sure.
But for those people who will take it a step farther and call him a fictional character,
well,
they didn't name.
Well, if you do that, your ignorance is showing, because he's a better documented figure than anyone before 1900.
I mean, he was so important.
1800, I mean.
That we changed the way we number the years in history
to
suit his existence.
That is funny you bring that up, because something just popped in my head. So people who lived, let's say, 300 BC, when they're in school and they wrote the date on the chalkboard, did they write minus 300?
No, they were writing the Jewish year.
Exactly.
The Hebrew year. Which back, 300.
Which started when, by the way?
When Adam and Eve.
At creation, right? So...
Yeah, in fact, they're in year, I think it's 5777. So
this year.
400 years before Christ would put us, they'd be at year 3377.
Right. So, my point is like the whole idea behind BC and AD revolves around Jesus' death. Completely.
Exactly.
It's not like they wrote, like I said, they weren't like, well, here we are, and why were they counting backwards? Because they weren't. This was applied.
And there were plenty of non-believers in that time. There were plenty of non-believers all throughout existence. There have been people who have scoffed at the idea of Jesus Christ.
But I do know people, in fact, one is a member of my family, who will make the argument that the Bible is just a bunch of fairy tales. None of it's true. And it was basically, it's used to control people, which my retort to that is simple. Is if that is a method of societal control, it's the most utterly failed system ever, because it hasn't succeeded at all, and they're still at it.
Dr. Spock should have written the Bible.
It hasn't solved anything as far as that goes, right? It hasn't. It's not effective.
If you're counting on your own intuition, the education we were given, because we were all born into a system that was in place before our parents were born. But if you're going to rely on what you were taught in school, and then pretty much, where do you get your information? Maybe college, and then really the television set and websites you visit. If that, and the popular ones, if that is where you're going to form your opinion about whether the Bible is true or not, you will probably come to the same realization or belief that I had up until 8 years ago, which is it's a book of myths, and it's so been certainly proven as a book of myths that I don't even need to open it up. But I had something happen to me that got me to open it up, and that's when I realized there is something different about that book that separates it from anything that has ever been written.
Yeah. But I know what you mean, because to say that he's absolutely fictional, like, okay, Santa Claus, sorry kids, but Santa Claus isn't real.
No. And
it's made up. But the genesis, if you will, of Santa Claus wasn't 2,000 years ago. Right? This is quite a modern tradition. Santa Claus, Saint Nick. I mean, he didn't even come on the scene until, I don't know, before the Middle Ages, whatever, right? 500, 600 years ago.
Which was funny, because
so how did Jesus?
That's when the idea of Jesus not even being a real character started, because that was not even an option.
Yeah, because it was
200,
ridiculous.
300 AD, 400, 500 AD, 600, 700.
Right.
The idea that he didn't even exist really has only popped up here in the very end times.
It would be akin, not the same thing, but it would be akin to, with our young age as a country here, if you were right now claiming that George Washington was not a real person. Right? Like, those people were fake. They're made-up fictional characters to fool us into something.
Yeah, there's actually...
That's so utterly ridiculous.
There's more documentation on Jesus Christ than even George Washington.
Right.
I mean, we've got George Washington's letters. We've got... Now, from the day. This is the burden that people put on proving Jesus. Who in the day wrote about him? Well, in the day, there were three factions writing about Jesus: the Hebrews, the converted Christians, and the Romans. They all acknowledge his existence, even to their own detriment. Flash forward 1,800 years to, say, George Washington. Yeah, there's a lot on George Washington today, but most of that is regurgitated information written by recent authors whose life did not overlap with George Washington, but the amount that was documented on George Washington, which would have been the governmental papers to help start the country, his personal letters, direct stories of people that knew him, there's more about Jesus Christ than there is even about the most famous figures in history. So this argument that he didn't even exist, for me, just proves you are deciding not to look. This isn't an intellectual thing anymore.
Right.
This is now a psychological issue with you. So we're coming close to a break.
Can I mention
when
one-
we come...
Sorry to interrupt. Can I mention one thing? You mentioned the Romans, and I've heard so much when you start talking about Jesus on Facebook and everything. So many people deny that the Romans said anything about Jesus.
Well, they haven't looked.
Yeah.
Seneca, Pliny the Younger. We'll come back from break with a list of Romans that wrote about him.
Yeah.
Because there's about a little under 24, by the way.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. And remember, it was a big deal to write back then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
they didn't
yeah.
have reams of paper and pencils
Yeah, no.
lying around.
Right.
It was a process to even get a papyrus, and to have that many scribes all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
That was not an accident. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we are going to talk about some interesting facts about Jesus Christ that you might not know or might not realize.
Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole for our second hour topic. We're going to be talking about little-known facts about Jesus. Something that David whipped up a couple weeks ago we haven't gotten to, but we wanted to get into because it's an interesting topic. And since we've been talking about him a lot today, I think it's appropriate.
Well, so we started off talking about, I almost think it's a silly argument to even give it space. But for those people that don't even believe he was a real figure, there were a lot of non-religious writings about the man, Jesus, as a known figure, at least as someone named Jesus who came from Nazareth and was crucified. This did happen to somebody. Okay, it also happens to be the same person that claims to be the Son of God. Whether these guys believed it or not, they at least said that. So here's some of the names you can look for. Have you guys ever heard of Tacitus?
Mm-hmm.
There's one. Pliny the Younger. Josephus, certainly. Apparently, I wasn't even aware of this, but there's documentation about Jesus in the Babylonian Talmud. Lucian was... Now, some of these guys were going off of people that had seen Jesus directly, and they're writing about it later. But all of this is essentially in his lifetime. You've also got... I just saw a really interesting... So Tacitus, Cornelius Tacitus. He's a Roman historian. He was living in the early 2nd century. So this is going to be people that would have been alive for Jesus would still be alive when he's writing about this. He wrote about Nero. So what's interesting is Tacitus records that Nero shifted the blame for the burning of Rome from himself to the Christians. Now, this was written by a Roman historian back at that time. Very much the way that future generations are going to look at the World Trade Center and blame it on the Muslims, when actually it was the Romans themselves who did the burning of the city, which the Christians were blamed for. The same way that same power base, because Rome never died. They just went silent. And that same governmental organization, at the end of the day, is who brought us 9/11. And, of the faction known as, at the end of the day, we call them the Illuminati, whatever you want, the synagogue of Satan. So this was there was a letter. I'm just going to read you off this website. This is regarding Cornelius Tacitus. Hi, Eric. It's nice to see you, Eric.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Welcome back.
Nice to see you moving around, pal. Okay. Hence, to suppress the rumor, he charged with guilt and punished with the most exquisite tortures. This is Nero about the Christians, commonly called Christians, who were hated for their enormities. Christus, the founder of the name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea, during the reign of Tiberius. So this is recorded in several different governmental papers. Pliny the Younger is another one. Don't confuse him with his father. He also is documenting the existence of Jesus Christ. There was, where's the fun one that I saw?
I was going to bring up a quick point that relates to that Roman historian lived in the early 2nd century, writing about the Christians. If Jesus Christ wasn't a real person, where did all these Christians come from? Why are they Christians?
Yeah.
So you're right. The argument's ridiculous.
So, okay, we've got Flavius Josephus. He was born in the time of Christ. He also wrote about, here's what he had to say about Christ. He was the Christ, and when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those who loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the 3rd day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of the Christians, this is what they were called back then, because essentially it's like another Jewish tribe.
Kind of was a tribe, yeah.
So named for him, for Christ, Christian. They're not extinct at this day. Now, he's writing this from like 60 A.D.
So what was his first sentence there?
He was the Christ.
Okay, that is, who wrote this?
This was Flavius Josephus.
Okay, so Flavius Josephus, in that writing right there, just laid claim to the fact that Jesus was the Messiah.
And that Flavius
that's what Christ
Josephus,
means.
he's a non-Christian and he's not Jewish. He's a Roman. And he actually wrote, for he appeared to them alive again the 3rd day.
Yeah.
Just as the divine prophets, just as the Old Testament said he would.
Yeah.
Rise again. So this is a governmental, essentially, reporter. There are others. Look up a man named Thallus. He wrote about Jesus in 52 A.D. There's another one, the letter. Now, this one's interesting. I had not run across this until just now. 20 minutes ago. There was a letter by, it looks like this was a rabbi or a priest. I'm not certain about that. The letter of Mara ben Serapion. You guys familiar with this?
No.
Mara bar Serapion. MARABAR-SERAPION. It was a letter that was in the British Museum for a long time. It was written in the days of Christ. And it was a letter written by a father to his son in prison. Okay? Now, this is written, looks like about 70 A.D. So this would be like us talking about the Vietnam War. Like,
Okay.
we can still go and talk to a million veterans that will tell us about the war. Okay? That's not like off. This is the same. This is what we're talking about. Because this is written in 73 A.D. This is 40 years after Jesus died. And I think this is fascinating. What advantage, this is in the letter written in 73 AD, what advantage did the Jews gain from executing their wise king? Now, this letter never states the name of who this wise king that was executed is, but I think we can infer
Sure.
they're talking about Jesus Christ. It was just after that their kingdom was abolished. Because this is one of the things that really pissed off the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees, as Jesus said, this temple is going to get destroyed very soon because you're rejecting me. Now, here's a guy that is outside of Christian and Hebrew circles. He's talking about the Jews as their king, okay? So I doubt he's Christian either. He is aware that Jesus said that the city, Jerusalem, would fall, and now he's writing right after it fell, because it fell in 70 AD. So this is written a couple years after it fell. The letter goes on to say, but Socrates did not die for good. He lived on in the teachings of Plato. Pythagoras did not die for good. He lived on in the statue of Hera. Nor did the wise king, Jesus, die for good. He lived on in the teachings which he had given. And then the commentary is, it's very probable the wise king referred to Jesus, yes. The writer mentions the Jews lost their kingdom soon after they executed their wise king. Less than 40 years after the crucifixion of Jesus, the Romans destroyed the city of Jerusalem, and the Jews, as God had said, were scattered once again. And that scattering was going to take place and was going to last until the last days as we entered Daniel's. We've only got, there's a prediction of Daniel's 70 weeks, and there's a question mark interchange in there, which is time for God's people to do their thing. But what we're really looking at, this book that has predicted all the future before it happened, is basically telling us right now, get prepared for what is called Daniel's 70th week. This was a prophecy that was written 400 years before Jesus Christ. It was in that prophecy, the appearance, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ was also discussed 400 years before it happened. And when that last week of years begins, and there are some very clear markers that Christians will know, we now know that the world will have 7 years left to go, as we know it, before the kingdom of God comes down. That seventh week has not started yet, or if it, or it started so recently we haven't picked up on it, but certainly Christians around the world are waiting for this to happen or to begin very soon. There was another. Now this is a rabbi. And remember, rabbis back then, they probably had a tough decision to make, because on one side you've got the spiritual elders like Caiaphas, who I believe was the head of the Pharisees. He's sort of the name, this way Pontius Pilate is attached to the Romans as Jesus' murderer. Caiaphas would be the Hebrew priest behind his murder. Or execution, I should say. So, not all rabbis, though, were on the same page with Caiaphas and the majority of the Sanhedrin. What was the name of the Pharisee that was very friendly to Christ? What was his name again? Starts with a C.
Ooh, trivia.
No,
Yeah,
it's not trivia because I don't know the answer.
I
It
don't
was
know.
Caiaphas' father-in-law.
I don't know.
All right.
I'll find it.
So this is now a letter from a rabbi, because a rabbi in the day, and this is the irony, if you're a rabbi in the year 30 AD and you believe your own scriptures, you should right around then be expecting the Son of God to appear. Okay? A man suddenly comes out claiming to be the Son of God. As history points out, predictions which were in writing going back as much as 1,400 years before the man came, we now know were in print, recorded, documented, as much as 1,400 years before he came. That's when it began.
Annas?
Huh?
Annas.
No.
That wasn't the one?
Mm-mm. It's the Pharisee that was always pulling him aside and asking him questions. And it might not start with a C. As soon
I
as you
don't
say
know.
the name, I'll know it.
I don't know.
And I don't have my Bible with me. So it's sort of odd, but in order to be a good rabbi, you'd think you'd have to know that Jesus was real. Somehow, the upper echelons of that religion were filled with people that went out of their frickin' way to make sure that it was not known that he was the Son of God. Even the Pharisees who killed him acknowledged the fact that he was performing miracles.
Right. Yeah.
He was healing people. He
Yeah.
was, for the first time in history, demons were being removed. For the first time in history, people were being raised from the dead. I mean, there was something that attracted crowds of thousands of people following him like a rock star. The Romans came down and scared the hell out of everybody, so they all scattered. But
Nicodemus?
thank you. It was Nicodemus.
Nicodemus, that's right.
So Nicodemus is an example of a rabbi who was on the court of Caiaphas, but I do believe Nicodemus is in heaven. I do believe he got saved.
He got the explanation what born again meant. That was the, that discourse that Jesus delivered to him.
So I would think that you're now putting these rabbis in a really tough position because they're dealing with the same things back then that we deal with today, which is peer pressure. You know, you're a rabbi. You've got a really nice life. You're wealthy. You live in a good home. Your family's well taken care of. You've got status. You're allowed to go sit at the front row of events. You're ushered into restaurants. Your friends are all other rabbis. Okay?
It's like Hollywood actors.
Yeah.
And you're now in this position after Jesus shows up, which is the same one that we are still in today. You turn on the world and follow Jesus, or you turn on Jesus and follow the world. And that simple decision, which is the crux of your personal salvation, was no different for them than it was for us. But even men that call themselves learned, that were tasked with knowing and teaching these same scriptures, which now when you read through it, I mean, do you not see, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you guys read the Old Testament, do you see Jesus in there?
All through it.
I mean, it's even coded.
It's in the first line of Genesis. I find Jesus there.
Yeah, when God is having a conversation with who? Yeah, I think that's a conversation with the Trinity.
The first
he
line,
says, let us make
that
them
and,
in our image.
and at creation, he said, let there be light the first day, but he didn't create the sun until the fourth day.
Good point.
So what light was he talking about? He's been there since the beginning. He's all throughout the whole Old Testament. You're right, is all about Jesus Christ. He pops up all over the place through the Old Testament.
It was even Chuck Missler that discovered, I don't know if he discovered this, but he's popularized it. He took the lineage from Adam to, I think it was Noah. 7 names. It was 7 generations.
Oh, yeah.
Adam, Lamech, Methuselah,
Yep.
Enoch, yada yada. And back then, a name did a lot. There was more than just letters arranged. There
Yeah,
were
it had
numerical values to the names, and there was meanings.
Yeah, it had definition.
Exactly.
So Adam meant something.
Well, I don't want to screw this up, but Adam means first man. I mean, that wasn't just his name. His name meant what he was.
Yeah.
So if you actually read the 7 names, it basically reads something along these lines. Adam, man, is appointed eternal sorrow, and some say, some savior's going to come and fix it. And
Right, that's like the...
I just gave you the real cliff notes. I screwed it up badly.
But I know exactly what you're talking about.
You're talking about the names and the Jewish meaning behind it?
Yes. They you combine
You can find it.
the 7 names, which, when God puts 7 names in order in the book in different places, everything's in there for a reason. And what's interesting is if you make a story out of their names, right there, the 7 generations before Noah talk about how God's plan is to save humanity by bringing his son, a savior, down. And a lot of people
So
ask...
it's here. I found it.
Okay.
So it starts with God, and then Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, in that order. And each one has its own name or own meaning. So you read it from the beginning. So God, the God, man is appointed, a mortal man of sorrow is born, the glory of God shall come down, instructing that his death shall bring those in despair comfort and rest.
Okay. So this is written about... This is going to be about 3,000 years before Jesus Christ shows up. Written in the first book of the Bible, the most sacred, perhaps sacred book in history is the book of Genesis. Just wild guess. It's now saying that the glory of God is going to come down, and through his death,
Yeah, a man is appointed. So that's
I think we can say Jesus is written in Genesis. And when you start to look at it like that, he's actually, I find him everywhere.
he's everywhere.
There's an angel that, it's called not an angel of God, the angel of God. And he always looks the exact same way in the Old Testament. He's got hair that's whiter than anyone can imagine, robes that are whiter than could ever be bleached, a golden sash. No name given for him.
Right.
However, after Jesus dies and he's resurrected, about 45 years later, he appears to John the Revelator, who wrote the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible. And when John describes what Jesus looked like to him, it was the exact same description as the guy from the Old Testament. His hair was white. He's so shiny you can't even look at him.
He pops up as a priest. Melchizedek was Jesus. I'm sorry.
He was the only other priest and king simultaneously.
Right. He had no genealogy, no mother, no father.
Right. So
this is actually explained in Hebrews. It's very interesting. Jesus was in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, and my authority for that is the original first century translation in Hebrew, when they messed up, right, and they were hiding from God because they were now ashamed, and they heard, well, our modern translation really kind of botches it up, but it says they heard God walking in the garden, right? They were scared. The actual Hebrew says they heard the memra of God walking in the garden, and that actually means they heard the word of the Lord walking in the garden.
And that is one of the names of Jesus Christ.
He is the Word.
The Word. In fact, I think it's the book of John that starts off with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God.
And the Word became flesh.
And you could just substitute Word for Jesus.
That's
in
right.
the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God. They were essentially one and the same.
Yeah.
How that works, I'm not exactly sure.
The book of Genesis is linked to the book of Revelation. That's the first and last book, and everything in between is all linked, and it all points to that man.
In fact, you take the first 5 books. Now, these were given to Moses, who would have to go through a special treatment to enter this like tabernacle-like thing. To literally, he was having these face-to-face interactions with God, and God gave him. I was going to say, as the legend goes, I don't think it's a legend. If it's written in that book now I believe it.
That's for real.
God gave him, and it's funny because even today, modern Hebrew scribes, it's sort of like an inside industry joke that if you get even one letter wrong while transcribing the Pentateuch, what's the name for the 5 books? The
Torah.
The Torah, thank you. that if you get even one little one little comma wrong, like the balance of the entire universe gets thrown out the window. Now, that's an oral tradition carried down. Oral traditions you'll find in a series of books called the Talmud. That these are the books that the priests would have used that provided things like explaining things that are in the Bible. This is like the teacher's manual in the background. So, there was somewhere I was going with.
You were saying when you get one thing wrong.
Oh, so there has been passed down through oral tradition this incredible emphasis on not screwing up one single letter.
Yeah.
Now, what's funny is, now we go back, and, there are people touched by God in many different ways. And there are some people that are touched by finding literally codes written in the Bible. I don't want us to, this is not about Bible codes, which is a little different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about messages buried in the Bible that are one layer deep. They're not going to be picked up just on the surface by the letters. One of those messages is, now, do you guys know how to spell Jesus' name in ancient Hebrew? What was
Yeshua?
Yeah, Yeshua. Sorry.
There are no vowels. It's the Y,
I'm
W,
failing.
H, the Yahweh.
Yahweh. But yes, anyway.
All right. And the Torah, again, the Torah was known as, I think it was the spelling, whatever the spelling was, a T-O-R-H.
Torah, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what happens. You start reading the Bible in its original Hebrew. And I am totally copying something that was, this was a presentation by Chuck Missler. I have nothing to do with this other than I'm copying his work, and if he copied it, I'm copying the copier's work.
Whatever, yeah.
But I have looked at it to see that this is indeed true. So you read Genesis, and there's a simple code is skipped letter sequencing. So you guys know that?
Yeah.
And, we even use that in the war where you write this innocuous statement, doesn't seem to mean much, but if you count every seventh letter, every seventh word, all of a sudden the real message comes out.
Sure.
Okay? These codes are all over the Bible. So if you read Genesis, you'll find, starting at the very beginning, if you do 7-letter skips, you'll see that the word Torah is spelled out. Okay, no big deal. That makes sense. So you go to the next book, Exodus. 7-letter sequencing from the start of the book. Here again, that's strange. Torah appears yet again in these 7-letter sequences. You go to the third book of the Bible, which I believe is Leviticus, the law, and it's not there. Sort of strange. There's no 7-letter sequence. And so you're thinking, okay, there's probably nothing here. You go to the fourth book, which is Numbers or Deuteronomy. Numbers.
One or the other. Yeah, I don't know the order.
You do the 7-letter sequence thing, and what's funny is the name Torah appears, but it's written backwards.
Okay.
Okay? You go to the last book in the original 5, 7-letter sequencing, and here again, the name Torah appears yet again, but it's written backwards. Okay?
Okay.
So, in a sense, because of the direction of the word Torah, and you've got 2 pointing to the middle, and the 2 at the end are also pointing to the middle, you take another look at this middle book, Leviticus. And what's really crazy is, if you've got 7-letter sequencing on both sides of this, okay? And 7 times 7 is 49. And if you then take a 49-letter sequence on the book of Leviticus, what you've got is the name of Jesus Christ. You've got Yahweh spelled out as if the whole book is pointing right back to Jesus Christ himself. Something else Chuck Missler said, which I thought was interesting. I've thought of a few examples that might be outside of this, but basically he'd made the point that, Jesus is the middle of history, BC and AD. Jerusalem is the middle of the world.
That's
and if you actually do look at it, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is the middle of all landmass.
Yeah.
And on a flat earth scenario, it is absolutely the middle of the whole darn thing. And I never knew this, but languages that exist that are east of Israel, east of Jerusalem, you actually read them from right to left.
That's right.
Like you would read
Chinese,
Hebrew.
Yeah.
And languages that are west of Israel, you read left to right.
Yeah.
And again, God is a God of fractals, these patterns you can see. And here again, for some reason, the languages of the world, in a sense, are pointed right back at this middle area, which is Israel/Jerusalem, the same way that the books of the Bible are pointing back to...
Which is where all the languages originated.
They did.
Right, they did. Something to point out about that, because some people may say, well, every 7 letters, and it's just a, thing. Except for something important, because you have these number patterns that appear and produce something, the word Torah. And you have number patterns that appear and produce the word Torah backwards. And then you have the same multiple of which. Now, the number 7... We could go into the significance of this, but number 7's important. It's not just 3 or 2 or 5. It's 7, and that's the number from completion. That's God's perfect number for a lot of reasons. But what makes it incredible isn't that it so happens to spell out Torah frontward, in reverse, and then the name Yahweh appears in Leviticus with the same the multiple of 7. What makes it the most incredible is that these books not only yield this pattern that yields a pattern, but these books also make sense, and they're intertwined, they're linked. You could never engineer something like that from a literary sense to have it make sense.
Right.
But different people wrote this stuff, right? They would have to, and they lived at different times. So you get the same sort of pattern things pop up in the New Testament as well, to where it's statistically impossible that it's an accident. That was done totally on purpose. And I've actually becoming sort of, I guess, like a New Testament Kabbalist, I guess you could say, where I think even, they say when Jesus comes back, all things will be interpreted, right? Everything will be, I think he'll even interpret the spaces in between the letters. I mean, it's so... There isn't a punctuation mark, a word, a letter. Nothing in that book is it's all there for our learning. And the deeper you look into it, the more of this kind of stuff you find. And
that's right. And
it's unreal.
To me, that is so fascinating. And I ran across a number a few years ago, when Jesus first is recruiting his disciples, and they can't fish. They haven't caught any fish that day. He's like, give it another shot, throw it off the right side of the boat, and they catch 153 fish. And, now, with the schooling that I got, I'm like, that number must mean something.
Yeah.
Now, I thank God for the internet, because I'm just like, 153 in the
It's
book
weird,
of Matthew.
right?
What does that mean? Someone worked out, because Jesus said, come with me and I'll teach you to be fishers of men. And symbolically, they catch 100. They mentioned that there's 153 fish. I'm surprised it was even counted by anybody. But you add up all of the miracles that Jesus performed across the 4 books of the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it adds up to 153, which goes to your point, Dave, which is in dozens, if not hundreds of examples and occasions in that book, 2 people that have no contact with each other must both be looking at the same thing to write about it in order for the end result to make sense. because when John's writing his stories and Luke's writing his stories, he doesn't have the number one. He's not calling John on the phone going, well, okay, I got 38 miracles. How many do you have? 'Cause I don't want to go over. Not like that. He's following some sort of direction where God is speaking. It's his hand on the pen and ink, but it's God's words in God's order that is what ultimately makes it to the paper.
Yeah, in the New Testament, the Greek word they use for that is actually divine compulsion. It's like the Holy Spirit forced them to write it that way. They're not just sitting down writing stories. This isn't even their own words so much. They're actually being a really good example. This would be the Book of Jude, where he makes the statement. In English, you lose it a little bit, but it really means like he sat down to write one thing, right? But then he was forced to write something completely different, and the word implies that it was divine compulsion. He was forced by the Holy Spirit. God said, "No, you will write this instead," and then he basically sat and started writing stuff down. And that is the case, I contend, for that entire book. In fact, you can't possibly. There's a pattern in the book of Mark with patterns of 7 again.
Oh, the patterns of 7 are all over the book. That
supercomputers couldn't even accomplish this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's one paragraph.
A lot of codes have only been cracked since we've had computers, and they just could never. There's a lot more. We just gave you 2 simple ones. You lay out in order of birth the first 7 generations before Noah, and the meanings of the names tell us the story of Jesus Christ. That is a code. We just talked about a second very simple code, 7-letter sequencing, pushing you back. Now, that's the type of code that maybe a rabbi could have figured out back then. We got into this subject because of this rabbi who was writing about Jesus, and we were talking about the difficulty this guy must have.
Yeah.
Because if you're really a learned rabbi and you've actually studied the scripture, you know yourself that Jesus is on every page. In fact, there's a reason the streets were lined up leading into Jerusalem as he walked in. People were expecting the Messiah to come in on that particular day.
It's because they did the math, presented
it is that precise.
in the Torah. It was that precise to that month and day, absolutely.
Daniel predicted the exact day,
roughly
400 years later, that a man named Jesus Christ would walk through this particular set of gates in the city riding a donkey.
Yeah.
Now, the donkey is an easy thing to counterfeit. But to predict, because this, the clock starts ticking on, it's like the third announcement of Artaxerxes to rebuild the temple. So you start the clock ticking. And they have a specific amount of time so that the Hebrews in the day knew exactly the day to expect him to come. They were the ones that were spiritual, were already there waiting for him. And so here's this rabbi that is probably feeling the same pull to even an extreme degree that we go through today. Here's what he wrote. Rabbi Eliezer is believed to have written the following in the last decade of the 1st century. So this is going to be about 50 years or so after Jesus Christ. It'd be like us, again, writing about the Vietnam War. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer said, Balaam looked forth and saw that there was a man born of a woman who should rise up and seek to make himself God, and to cause the whole world to go astray. Therefore God gave the power to the voice of Balaam, that all the peoples of the world might hear, and thus he spoke. Give heed that ye go not astray after that man, for it is written, God is not man, that he should lie. And if he says that he is God, he is a liar. And he will deceive and say that he depart and comes again at the end. He says, and he shall not perform this. Now, what's interesting about this is Balaam is a demonic god.
Well,
And-
Balaam is actually a person.
Well, but he's a representative of
He was a prophet.
the dark side.
Yeah, it was a prophet for hire, but he was a prophet.
He was not a prophet of the creator God.
Yes, he was.
Oh, he was.
Absolutely. It actually used later in the book of Jude as an example of apostasy because he was a prophet for hire. So he definitely had the gift. And he predicted the Christmas star. He predicted the star over sorry. But you know what I'm talking about. Help me out.
the Star of Bethlehem, the Magi.
Yeah, star. Thank you. Yeah, he predicted this star, and so Balaam was actually a pretty interesting character in the Old Testament. So that rabbi knew exactly who Balaam was.
Well, it's interesting because therefore God gave the power to the voice of Balaam that all the peoples of the world might hear, and thus he spoke, give heed that ye go not astray. Basically, this corrupted message is saying, don't follow this guy. He's a liar. He's not really the Son of God. In the context of early documented proof that someone walked the shores of, the Middle East and Jerusalem, claiming to be the Son of God, the point is Jesus is a real character. I'm not going to trust Rabbi Eliezer's viewpoint on whether he was the Son of God or not.
Right.
He just didn't have enough material back then like we know. Cornelius Tacitus is another Roman writer. Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, Lucian. He's written in the Talmud. He's documented more than anyone we know. So the argument that he's a fictional character
It's ridiculous.
is you may as well put on a
Forget
dunce cap.
Yeah.
Because that tells us you've made a decision without looking, and this is not an intellectual matter for you. This is a psychological matter. And at this point now, it is between you and your maker.
Yeah, I think it is interesting though because the idea that he's so well known for being crucified. Back then, man, being crucified was like getting a parking ticket. They have any other name of anyone else who was crucified?
Well, it's still a horrible death.
No, but I mean it was commonplace.
Well, when
This was
Multiple. Yeah,
you
they
just
had
got on the
multiple.
wrong side of the Romans, and you were up there, so it wasn't like unique to Jesus.
yeah, but the Romans really perfected
Millions,
crucifixion.
but millions of people were crucified. Why do we know about him? Is my
Well,
point.
here's what's incredible: is you can go to old books in the Old Testament that were written 1,000 years before the Romans even came on the scene, before crucifixion was even a thing.
Yeah.
And they're already predicting his death. And remember, God gives precise specifics so that if you do look, people say you can't prove the Bible with science, and I absolutely disagree with that. You can prove it. But God is he's not looking to recruit everyone. In a way, he's looking to weed people out.
Sure.
He says, you look for me, you'll find me.
It's a measure of faith.
But if
But
you're
you have
not
to
going to
look.
look and you're going to throw out an unthought out answer, oh, he wasn't real, or he wasn't the Son of God, without looking, understand you are gambling with your eternal soul that bet is right. Think about the risk reward you're going to do on that.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, you don't have to be a militant atheist to get on the wrong side of this thing. Right?
No.
I mean, you can be basically a good person, basically a nice
Right.
guy.
Yeah, my
Give,
buddy.
Loan sugar to your neighbor because they asked. And, raise your kids, you're good. Spank your kids. You don't have to be like a militant atheist hate monger to get on the wrong side of the Lord. I mean,
You just need to make a choice to be ignorant.
if you
I
don't,
saw a great
if
visual.
you don't believe in the Son, you've blasphemed the Holy Spirit. And
I
this,
saw
is
a
this
great-
is a big problem for
a
you.
great visual I'm going to do with you guys, and you guys in the audience can follow along. I'm looking at a table, and I've got 2 drinks in front of me. Okay? This red Gatorade represents the most holy, the best person that's ever existed. Throw out some names.
Jesus Christ.
Besides that,
Besides Jesus, the best human that's ever
let's
lived.
just say Mother Teresa.
Mother
okay?
Teresa.
Mother Teresa comes up a lot. Okay, here's Mother Teresa, okay? Who's the worst person that's ever existed? Most evil human being ever?
Let's just
My
say
ex-boss.
Hitler.
Hitler.
Okay.
Okay, I'm looking at 2 drinks, and they form a span. All of us, humanity, we fall somewhere on this line. I
Fair.
know some people that are closer to Hitler. I know some people that are close to Mother Teresa. And, I'm probably closer to right in the middle, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Now, here's what screws people up. God is over here. I'm now holding up a book on a shelf that is nowhere near the span formed by these two upright drinks that I'm looking at. All of humanity is in between those two drinks. God is over here, and there's a chasm. There's a space. And it doesn't matter if you're Mother Teresa and you're the best human being, and it doesn't even matter if you're Hitler. No human can get across that space. There's only one way to do it, and that is Jesus Christ. And if you're thinking that, God is the God of heaven, I'm sure he'll make arrangements for me. There might even be some physical limitations on this, because what is sin? Darkness, right? I mean, do you not associate, God is light?
Yeah, sure.
What is the opposite of God? Darkness, sin, good, evil. So, Matt, you see this room now? There's shadows all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you put a light in this room that's bright enough, the brightest thing, ever, the sun, for instance, there will be no shadows left.
Right.
Meaning a shadow or sin, it's not whether God wants to or not, it's that it just doesn't exist in his presence. It just burns out. And if you really understand what the Bible is doing is Jesus had figured out a way for us to be in God's presence without burning out. And it's by putting on a special suit that you only can get from Jesus Christ himself. I'm using metaphors, but wake up, folks. We are talking about your eternity. Even if you think there's only a 0.00001% chance that we're right, look into it, because the risk to not know this with certainty, it's higher than any insurance you have on your house for fire, and there's a much better chance that we're right than your house is going to burn down. So think about that. So with that, we're out this week. We'll be back next week with everybody.
Yep.
Tony?
I just want to chime in real quick. You guys talked about the Torah and the Bible codes and things. One of the good ones to look up is Richard Shaw, who was L.A. Marzulli's business. Chuck Missler.
There are guys
guy,
out there that
he's got a
they
in-depth, a lot
specialize
of
in this.
a lot of information.
This is how the body
if
of
you want
Christ
to
works. Good. Richard Shaw's the name?
Richard Shaw.
All right.
Shaw.
Howard, do you want to get
Okay.
us out of here?
Well, this has been Down the Rabbit Hole. We'll see you next week.